just going to get the link really quickly and share it, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, it's getting all started up. Let's see, go live. Okay. Okay, TikTok's going. Let's see. YouTube. Okay. Yeah, hey guys, if you're just joining us, we're just about to get started, okay? I'm just getting everything going on live, and then we'll be good to go. Okay. And we'll be good to go. Okay, good, we got that. Let me just post this on Instagram, and we will be good. It's crazy. There's just like so much stuff like behind it that you actually have to like set up for you to be able to get started. And it's funny because you actually have to join this Google Meets call first, or like your video just doesn't pick up from it, like on the actual like OBS and the streaming software. So it's actually quite a pain. But
oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it's a lot. So it normally takes like 10 minutes just to get everything going. But okay, just gonna post this and we'll be good.
They should make an app that can actually connect to TikTok.
Yeah, it's a pain. Like TikTok's just like really like secretive. Like basically to stream on all these other platforms, you have these like stream keys, and TikTok like their customer service is like kind of bad, so it's difficult to actually do it.
Right.
Okay, let me see here.
So you're streaming from TikTok, you're streaming from your computer to TikTok.
Yes. Yeah, so from computer to TikTok, and then basically from there, you can also do it cross-stream to like Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so we're just going to get started now. So, okay, guys, welcome everybody. We're getting started with the show here. Today is episode 5 of my show. We have an awesome guest today. His name is Conrad, who is so welcoming to be here with us today, and I'm so happy to have you here. And he's actually been following the challenge for quite a while. And fun fact, he's also from Toronto as well, so that's going to be pretty exciting. So typically how I like to start these things is, I normally give my guests the opportunity to explain a little bit about themselves, what their real like goals are, and then we'll scale things like that way. So if you want to get started with that.
So I'm a third-year computer engineering student, and basically where I'm at in my career right now is to get experience to, really snowball my career into like hopefully software development or something like artificial intelligence, because that's really booming right now. Mainly is to do those things that I'm passionate about, and also. It's a good field to go into because it pays well, right? And it will get me closer to financial freedom, which is like my true goal, because I don't want to I don't want to be forced to go to work every day. Like, you know what I mean?
For sure.
I want to be able to have the right to just like not go to work if I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't want to be forced to do things every day. So
sure.
Yeah, that's my main goal. Yeah.
Okay, so basically you want to go into a career that's high paying, so that you could be able to afford yourself the luxuries of having a nice lifestyle, and basically being able to support yourself by other means rather than just strictly working all the time.
Yes.
Pretty much. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I hear that, I intuitively think of the position of saying, like, look, the best thing for you would probably be to accumulate assets that'll actually help you and supplement this income over time. So let me basically explain where I'm going at. Okay. So in my opinion, there's 2 basic ways that you can look at a sort of like personal finance journey. And number 1 is the most common, which is this way, right? Where you're collecting assets, like maybe you collect stocks, or you work and you buy rental properties or businesses, or whatever it might be, right? Whatever you like. The second way is sort of building a business and scaling it up, like to be a massive business, and that's what I do, but that's very, very difficult, and I find it quite heartwarming that a lot of people just like prefer the like personal asset collection angle because it makes so much more sense and it's going to allow you to be a lot happier and have a lot of freedoms like a lot sooner, right? So I guess from that perspective, what sort of timelines are you looking at to say like, okay, you want to be like financially free by like is age 35, 40? Like what are you thinking?
That's a really good question. I'm only 20 years old, so I
Hmm.
haven't really thought about that yet. And yeah, also about the business topic. Yeah, I am also interested in starting a business with like-minded computer engineers like myself.
Hmm.
Later down the line, I hope to go into the industry, gain some like industry knowledge, and then hopefully start my own business with a few friends.
Sure. Okay. So those that's funny that you mentioned that actually because those are actually kind of contrasting, right? So when I think about the like tech sort of startup angle, which I have a ton of friends who do that, those guys are basically hoping that their business becomes big enough to end up supporting them, right? And oftentimes what happens is this is sort of like a goal that is really like I don't want to say like unreachable, but it's like you have to look at your opportunity cost, right? So for my friends, for example, I have friends who have a healthcare messaging company. They've been at it for 7 years, and realistically, they're probably still like 5 or 6 years away from reaching maybe like a 20 to 30 million dollar valuation, and they have a bunch of investors and stuff like that, right? So if you look at that, basically they are investing 12 to 13 years of their life to create this company that might be worth like 20 to 30 million, and maybe after all that they get maybe like 3 or 4 million cuts each, something like that. If you look at the actual opportunity cost of what you could have done over those years, you could have worked at a company like Amazon or Apple or one of these, making like 3, 4, 500,000 dollars a year plus stock options over all that time, and you would have actually outperformed the person who actually had the startup in most cases. And that's not even considering the fact that like most startups don't end up working out, right? So I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm just saying like whenever you think of an opportunity in terms of okay, I want to go into business or whatever, create my own business, always consider the opportunity costs and not necessarily what can go wrong because I don't really think of like that myself. But it's all about like okay, if I'm going to commit 10 years to this, what else can I be comparing it to in that time, right? And that's something that a lot of people don't actually think about. So, yeah, like having said that, uh, I would just be very cognizant if I was you about the other route you can do because you can also always say, look, you want to go and have a good high paying job, then you can start investing in things, and it doesn't have to be like crazy things, right? Like you can buy like S&P 500 stocks and things like that will pay you like a steady dividend. Like people do that. Like I have tons of friends who go out, they'll go and make like a few $1 million over like 7 or 8 years, and you can actually set it up in such a way that you can have a collection of stocks that'll pay you about $100,000 a year in just actual dividends, right? And depending on your risk tolerance, that number, that amount of stocks you actually need to produce that can be much lower and actually very manageable. So it's all about the life you want, right? And it's basically a matrix. I know you're a computer guy, so you can appreciate it, right? It's like you have to
Yeah.
consider your risk, you have to consider your opportunity cost, you have to consider the actual outcome that you want, right? So having said that, I know you're 20. You don't have to have all the answers. Like I didn't have any answers at that age, right? But I kind of had an idea of the things that I wanted in my life, right? Like nice cars, nice houses, and these sort of things. And I always knew that okay, my sort of like minimum number to have was about like $50 million. And to some people that might sound outrageous, but that's genuinely what I thought back then, right? So I guess my question to you now is, maybe even if you have a range, what is your essentially the goal that you're working towards here?
Really, just financial freedom.
Okay.
That's my main goal, and like I don't want to have to worry about money
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and one thing like is is like the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could um, have a really high paying job and live a really nice life, but then all of your income will go to sustaining that lifestyle.
Yeah. So that's something that's typically called a lifestyle creep, right? So let's say you have a guy, he makes $100,000, then he gets a promotion, he gets another 50,000 or whatever. He's not actually getting another 50,000 in income, right? You have to consider like taxes and all these things. But typically, when people get a promotion, it creates this like psychological change in you, which says, okay, I can afford more stuff now. So like you're not actually earning more, right? Like net after everything because you're spending more, right? And that happens all the time. Like I have so many friends who I swear to God make like $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and they're actually cash flow negative. Like they have to take loans out to pay for their kids' private school and all these things, and it's crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, it happens all the time, man. So you have the right idea though. So if your like main goal is to be financially free, especially in Toronto, probably like $50,000 a year like isn't even enough to do it, right? You probably need closer to like $80,000 to $120,000 to be truly like per year to be truly financially free. So basically, now that you have that number, that's a very like achievable goal, by the way. Now you should sort of think about how am I actually going to generate enough assets to actually produce that income, right? And I guess a general question. So, do you have any preferred like asset classes? Like, do you like crypto? Do you like stocks? Do you like real estate, businesses? Like, do you have any preference for that? Or
Yeah, so hopefully I hope to like have a diverse portfolio
okay,
because like say I put it all in stocks and then stocks like
hmm,
explode, then I don't have that money
yeah,
anymore. So like I'd prefer to have like some in stocks or something long term. Um, I'm a really big fan of like um, having more control over my investment.
okay,
So you know how you put your money into stocks, and it's up to the people at that
of
company
course,
to do well with it, right?
hmm.
Um, but say for example you have your own rental property, you have more control over
Hmm.
that asset, if you know what I mean.
No, no, for sure. And like I'm an extreme example of that, right? Because I am a private equity investor, first and foremost, and I buy companies and I don't just sit back, I actually run the companies and insert myself into them, right? So I'm basically an extreme example of your preference there. So I can speak to this, very clearly. And yeah, like from your perspective, like I think rental properties make a ton of sense just in general for people, right? Because it's a clear path to financial freedom, and not just that, right? It is attainable, and that's what a lot of people don't understand, right? And for you to get like $100,000 a year, it really wouldn't be like that bad, right? Like you look at the average like rental unit in Toronto. I know my numbers for that. So typically, like you'll have an apartment. If the apartment's around like 800 to 1,000 square feet, typically it's going to rent for about like 27 to $2,800 per month, and the cost on them right now is about like 5 to 600,000, right? So you're roughly looking at about like between like 0.5 to like 0.8% in rental income like per month, which is okay, but it just means like the actual price of the condos are a little bit like expensive now, and I know they've come down a lot, but still like the actual return on that isn't huge, right? So you might get like a 5, 6, 7% return depending on your actual leverage, but what happens is that you can literally look at this as like a math equation, right? The best thing about real estate and rental income is that it's fixed. So that means like you typically know, how much is coming in each month, each year, however long you want to do it. And that's notwithstanding all you can have tenant problems and things like that, but we're talking about like the average case here, right? So in your case, to really generate about $100,000, per year, you'd really need about ten to $12,000 per month in actual net income, right? Just to get that, that's basic math. Now, what you're looking at is typically about like half of the rental payment is going towards your mortgage. Then you have things like insurance. You have like random things that break. So typically, in my experience, what's left after all the rental income is about like 35 to like 40% of it. So that means if someone pays you, like $1,000 in rent, typically you'll have about like 300 to like $350 per month in actual net income for you, right? So then it's just a math problem, right? Like typically, if you want to get to your level that you're looking for, you'd probably need about like 5 or 6 rental units, which means now you'd have to actually look at the amount of money you actually need to achieve that. So if and stop me, you can stop me at any point, right? If you wanted me to re-explain something, but let's use easy numbers. So let's say the average apartment is 500,000, right? So if it's 500,000, typically if you're like a first time home buyer, or you're just sort of getting into it, the bank is gonna want to see you put in at least probably 20% of that money, right, as a down payment. And as you get more experience, they'll be able to scale it back for you. But okay, so let's say you buy your first unit, it's 500,000. You're going to need $100,000 cash, right? So that means, by simple math, you're going to have to make at least like $250,000 a year to be able to afford that, because you're going to have to pay like 40% of it in taxes. Then you're going to have to spend some money to live, and that's what your numbers sort of look like, right? And you don't have to make it over 1 year; it could be over a few years or whatever. But then that's the sort of numbers you're going to have to look at. So you're going to need to be roughly looking at like $500 to about $700,000 in post-tax cash to be able to buy those rental units you want, to be able to afford that like $100,000 in rental income each year to support the lifestyle you want. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So then I guess then if so let's say we know those numbers now, right? You need $500,000 to roughly get to where you want to be. How comfortable are you living on sort of like I hate the word frugal because I always have like a negative like connotation with it, but like how comfortable are you with living, like well under your means? Because that's going to greatly impact how quickly you can do this if speed is important for you.
Yeah, so like as a student, right? This past year, I like my living expenses aside from rent was like around $100 a week, so
Oh,
400 a month. So
nice.
I can really cut it cheap. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay, no, that's good then. So, typically, from what I know, if you and are you going to like U of T? Also, I forgot to ask.
I'm
Or
going to Queens.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. So basically, uh, as long as you get like a really good placement in something like at a pretty good company, then you're looking at entry jobs that can pay easily like 80, 90, $100,000 like right out of university, right? Especially for the tech sector that you're in. Basically, you just want to get a really good offer out of the gate, right? Because the difference between you starting with like an $80,000 job and like $105,000 job is like a huge benefit for you, because that's what you need. You need to be looking at how you can maximize your income now so that you can have money to put towards these investments, right? And I understand that might sound like obvious, but a lot of people don't think this way, right? And they'll just sort of take any job they can, like right out of university, and they're not really thinking about their goals. So it's really good that you're thinking about this now, man, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, okay. So from like a roadmap perspective, I realistically think you can do this by like age 30. Okay. And I'll give you an example just with my own life, right? Like I was in school. I actually went to university for 5 years. I did some extra like minors and things like that. So I really didn't even start in business until I was like 25, which is like, well, 24, 25, which is like, 5 years later than where you're at right now, right? And just between age like 25 and 30, I was able to, generate over like $30 million of net worth, right? So me telling you that you can do this by 30 is not like some stretch, right? Like this is very realistic. So in my experience when talking to all kinds of people, as soon as people understand that a goal is realistic, it becomes more real for them and they get a lot more motivated by it, right? So I want you to always have this mindset that, look, I can achieve this and I will achieve this in this timeline. And I think timelines are extremely important because that's going to drive the urgency, right? And it's not about saying like, oh, I just want to be rich or whatever. You have to think of it from the perspective of, hey, this is my motivation to be great and have the life that I want to have because I'm working so hard right now, studying in school. I'm going to be working soon, doing all these things, and that's going to be the real like reward and payoff for it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so basically, so you're in third year now, and have you done any like real internships so far, like in any of the summers or anything?
I'm actually doing an internship right now,
Okay.
but here's my dilemma. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I my GPA in university is really bad
Mm-hmm.
because like I'm young, like I didn't really care about school until like now.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, wait, like GPA matters, extracurriculars matter, your internships matter, all this stuff matters. So I'm really like trying to like stand out more. So um, like after my work, like after a work day, I will do some coding on the side to like hone my skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've also joined more clubs and stuff. But basically, my internship is like nothing to do with what I want to do, and like um, I could get away because I work at Celestica. I don't know if you know them.
I
Do you know
don't
them?
actually.
Okay, so it's a really big company. It's like multi-billion dollar company.
Okay.
And I'm working in like the supply chain sector, which has nothing to do with like computer engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope like when I graduate, maybe I can go back there and then switch departments, go into like software development. But the issue with that is that they don't really pay as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like around 60K probably.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess because like these huge companies don't really compensate that well. So yeah, I think I just have to lock in and go for it in my last year.
Yeah, 100%, man. You have to become an animal. Like if you're gonna like, you have to think too. Like these big companies like Apple, Netflix, all the ones that people want to go to, they're taking people from all over the world, man. They're taking people who like haven't even gone to university, right? In some cases, and it's because they're able to pass the tests. And you can do that without having like the best GPA and things like that. You just have to become an animal in coding, right? Like you have to spend hours every single day practicing, learning, maybe doing like the code courses from like expert people or whatever way you want to. You have to become an expert in this if you want to achieve this level of income to really get this lifestyle, right? Because $60,000 is going to be very difficult. Because remember what we talked about before about the difference between like $80,000 and like $105,000 starting salary. If you're starting at 60, it's still doable, but your time horizon now might be like 35 instead of 30. That's a huge difference, man. That's like 8 to 10% of your life potentially. Just in that change alone.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be like extremely motivated to say, hey, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to be the best coder possible. And you can do it, man. Like I have friends who started coding like later in life, like even like, older than you. And they literally just became self-absorbed with it, right? Like all day reviewing the stuff, just practicing, speaking with people, getting like better, getting people to critique their stuff. And that's how you really do it, man. And I'm telling you, once you sort of lock in with that, it's gonna be a huge like boost forward because it's gonna teach you so many things about yourself, right? If you're able to really master it and kind of like from a place of like starting on the back foot a little bit, that's gonna be such a huge accomplishment once you're able to do it, right? And that's the best thing about coding, right? It's like 100% like logic and knowledge, so in practice, right? So as you get more knowledgeable and as you build on top of that, man, the sky's the limit. And that's what you need to do. You need to be like so hungry for that, right? Because like you look at like there's no reason why you can't be making like even more than $500,000 a year from working at these big companies, right? You can become the best. You certainly can do it, right? You just have to like believe in it. And I understand that, that might sound like a cliche or something, but that's the truth, right? So many people want to think like, oh, I see this other person doing this path, but that's them and not me. It's like, you can make it happen, man. You can, right? So I want you to have this mindset of saying, look, I want to be financially free by age 30 or whatever year, or age you want it to be. But in order to do that, we broke that math down already. You need at least like $500,000 or $600,000 in post-tax cash, which means you really need to be making way over like $100,000 a year, like from age like 23 to 30, basically, to make that happen. Those are your numbers, right? I know you don't want to sacrifice on the outcome. So if you don't want to sacrifice on the outcome, you got to do whatever it takes to make it happen, right?
I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I'm really trying to be marketable to employers, right? So I'm doing like trying to get my GPA up, doing like clubs and stuff to hopefully get experience and these clubs like they're design teams and they have industry experts. So and they have ins, so they can hire you from there. Like I'm really trying to do everything that I can to put myself out there, and I
Mm-hmm.
think like probably like the only thing I'm missing is like a mentor, and that's like the probably the biggest like boost is having a mentor because they've been in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm also looking for.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, man, about like tech and stuff in general, right? Is there this is a well-worn path at this point. So there are a ton of people who have done that, exactly, right? Like I can't sit here and tell you exactly what to do in tech because that's not my life. But I can tell you a lot about hard work. I can tell you a lot about getting and becoming like the best version of yourself possible, and that is all a mindset and a choice, man. And as soon as you accept that the only reality for you is to become the best version of yourself possible, that's when you're going to start getting like just to the next stratosphere of success and motivation, right? And man, as soon as you start realizing, look, this is achievable, I'm going to do this, this is what I have to do, and all I have to do is like take the steps each and every day, that's when like amazing things are going to happen, right? And again, you have to just keep it in your mind. This is achievable. I can do this. This has been done before. I'm going to do it. And as soon as you start thinking like that, it just becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like I never get up at any point during any morning, no matter how bad things are, and think, oh man, today sucks. Like I'm gonna fail. Like never, never, man. Like I promise you, never. Right? It's like it doesn't matter like what the odds are. I always think like, look, I'm gonna get out here. I'm gonna be the best at this, no matter what. And this is very uncommon, right? Like people tend to always think like, oh, it worked out for this person, but it's not going to work out for me because of some like circumstance or whatever, or they don't like believe in themselves enough. That's the number one thing you can do, man. And I'm saying this not as a cliche. Again, I'm saying this because it's the truth, and it has to come from you. Like I can tell you to do all these things, but the fire that you have to achieve the life that you want has to be so strong that nothing else matters. That's the thing you need to focus on, okay?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Um, yeah, so I have a bunch of questions to ask you
Sure.
here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like completely unrelated to what we were talking about, but
No
like
problem.
what made you want to start having a presence on social media?
Yeah, so I often partake in this exercise where I think about myself when I'm, 70 or 80 years old. And the crazy thing is, like, I was always going to be successful no matter what. Like, I was extremely happy just having a nice private life when I was like 28 before I started all this stuff. And, my friends knew I was extremely successful, my family knew, and that's all I needed. I didn't need any validation from anybody, right? It was all about, okay, I know that I have something to give to people, to really teach people and inspire people. Because when I look at a lot of the people who are teaching business and talking about these things, typically it's people who have never actually done anything, right? Or it's the people who are like huge, huge, huge billionaires that are completely relatable to, right? And I basically started the Zero to a Billion challenge to say, okay, look, you can literally start from nothing and do this, right? And you know how many messages I get a week with people thinking like, "Oh, I'm crazy," or I'm just like not gonna do it or whatever. That's the stuff that like man, that is like the best message I ever received, right? Because they have no idea about me because again, I'm new to social media, right? Like nobody saw my past. No one saw me from like age 20 to like 24, where I became like a monster, right? And that's why I'm doing all this stuff, and that's motivating for me to show this, right? It's like I know that this is probably going to take me 15 years or whatever, but when I'm done that, I truly think it's going to be like the most watched series of anything like on the internet, business related, like going forward, right? Because there's going to be like literally started from zero. And I
Yeah,
think it's going to be so fun, right?
I
And
mean, I've never heard of a $0 to $1 billion challenge, so good luck with that.
yeah, no, but that's it, right? Like you have to have reasons to do things, and it's like I didn't come
Exactly.
to social media for like clout or fame or any of those things. I'm doing it just to show people, look, this is what's possible. I get a ton of like, great messages every single day from people saying like I like the content, it motivates me to do things, and that's all it is. Like I love that, right? So it's fun.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, tell me more about like so it seems like at 25, like there's a switch that flipped in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Can you tell me more
Yeah,
about that?
sure. So, yeah, basically, I came from an extremely entrepreneurial family. My grandparents had car washes. My mother had an educational business. My father had several hair salons. Everybody in my family was an entrepreneur. And I had really grown up around that stuff, right? And I kind of always knew in the back of my head that that was for me because I had always had businesses and things to that point. But I always had a strong intellectual curiosity towards science and biology and medicine and all these things. So I really went to school for that. And I was a very good student. I had extremely high GPA and all these things. And I had the opportunity to go to medical school. But sort of towards my like fourth and fifth year, I realized, look, this is just not for me anymore. And the thing is that ever since I was really young, I was always like the best at whatever I tried to do, right? And that did not come from just natural talent. That came from my mindset of saying like, "Hey, I really love this." Right? And when I really love something, I just like go all in on it, and that is my superpower which allows me to be like great and world class at things, right? I did not have that affinity for medicine. I did not have that passion and that drive to be the best doctor in the world, right? I didn't have that. And that's okay, right? And I basically spent that time going to university studying for those things, but that didn't take away from anything sort of like development wise for my business like savviness or career because I already had those skills as a child, right? And after I got done with university and realized, hey, I did this stuff. I don't want to be a doctor now. I want to, I'm just going to default into what I know I can do, and that's business, right? So I basically started out by I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if this is a repetitive story. Like, I don't know if you've heard this before with like the books and stuff. But basically, I went and realized that you could sell books on Amazon. So I would go to all the Salvation Armies and Goodwills, and I grew up in Windsor, by the way, and that's southwestern Ontario. It's right across from Detroit. I literally used to go to Detroit all the time to all the Salvation Armies and buy all these books for like 10 cents each, and most of the time they would just give me them for completely free, right? And I would just take them home and I would scan them all. I would find like the good ones based on sales rankings, and I would send them into Amazon. And literally within a year, I had like $1 million Amazon business. So it's like to say how the switch flipped. It's basically like, look, I always knew I had that talent, and I just needed to do something now because I wasn't interested in becoming a doctor anymore. So does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. So yeah, I really see the correlation from the past and to what you're doing right now in the $0 to $1 billion challenge. Um, like really sticking with Amazon
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like you're really good at it. So
Absolutely. Like you have to that's something that people often get wrong too. It's like they think like, okay, if I'm good in one area, I'm going to be good in another area. That typically doesn't happen in business a lot, right? And when you find an area that you are extremely good in, you just stick with that. So like my whole thing for the challenge is like, look, we're gonna get this Amazon store to like probably $3,000 to $5,000 in sales per day. Then I'm just gonna start buying everything. Like we're gonna be buying houses, be buying companies, be doing all these things, and then we're gonna scale up so quickly. But I know that in order to do that, we have to have a strong base of like recurring revenue, and that's why we're just spending everything on the Amazon store to grow it right now. But that hugely plays from like what you said, my previous experience with Amazon, because that's what I tell people all the time. They always message me saying like, "Oh, I want to do what you do on Amazon," and I was like, "Well, you kind of can't because." Like I have like 7 years of experience doing this at like a world class level. If you just step into this, you're gonna lose all your money, right? And that's the thing, right? You can't have one without the other. If I was not good at Amazon or had the experience at Amazon, there's no way I would be doing that in the challenge right now. I would be doing like whatever skills or whatever I was good at, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I saw like a while ago I came across your channel
Mm-hmm.
and I was like looking at like how is he generating this income, and I was just curious. Like I wasn't even gonna do it. I was so curious, and I was I searched up a tutorial on how it's done, and it's like, man, if these guys are really making this much money, they wouldn't be sharing it.
Yeah. Like most people who say they're like Amazon gurus or whatever, they're just like frauds, or maybe they had like a lucky like drop shipping product, or
Yeah.
a private label, because that's like setting up Amazon today in 2023 is so incredibly difficult, okay? And if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you're going to fail. And you see these kids all the time. They say that they're like 17, 18 years old making millions of dollars on Amazon. It's probably not true for like most cases, right? And that's why I'm always extremely transparent with people, because like my mode of doing Amazon, it's not transferable to other people because it's so like highly based on my ability to like source products and like select products, right? So my model is pretty simple. Okay, you literally go find wholesalers of these different toys and games, or whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be that. It could be like sports stuff, anything, right? But when you go to get an account with these actual wholesalers, they don't just offer like 5 products. They have a whole catalog of like tens of thousands of products. How are you going to know which of those 10,000 you're going to buy? But it doesn't even start there, because each item has a minimum. So basically, you might have to say like, okay, I might have to buy like 50 of these, and they're maybe like $20 each or whatever, right? So you can see how if you have $10,000, you can lose it extremely quickly by just picking a few bad products. And that's what people don't get, right? And that's what nobody talks about, because if they're trying to sell you something, they don't want you to know the realities of it, right? They want you to say like, oh, follow my strategy and you're going to be successful. Like, I will never promote, Amazon in the way I do it to like the average person who has no experience with it, because it's just not transferable, right? And I've explained it like many times, like I'm doing it this way because this is like the skills that I have personally developed, and I'm doing it just out of the interest of like time for the challenge, right? Because like what I'm doing now is basically speeding this challenge up by about 10 years by drawing from this Amazon experience, essentially.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I also looked at your LinkedIn because I was
Mm-hmm.
curious about like where did you come from and whatnot. And I saw you started a company like Greech Corp.
Yeah, that's basically it's a holding company. So my business career is pretty straightforward. So I actually started with Amazon, and then from there I basically had like the money and the cash flow available to go and buy businesses. So I started with like that holding company, but then it ended up evolving into my medical company. So that's my main holdings now, and then that medical company owns several businesses.
Right. And so you started Choice One Medical, right?
I did not start it. I purchased it after it
Oh,
was about like 3 years old. Yes.
oh,
Hmm.
so like you put all your assets into your corporation.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that like it seems to me that's the way to go these days because there's so many like benefits from putting your assets into a corporation because it like protects you and all sorts of other benefits like that.
Hmm. Yeah, well, the main benefit for you, aside from litigation and things like that, would be the small business tax break. So basically, when you start a business, it can be a holding corporation, it can be anything. On the first like $500,000 of income in Canada, that only gets taxed at like 12% corporate tax rate. Whereas like after that, it jumps up to about like 25 to 30% depending on your income level for the corporation. So you're going to save a ton of money. Like Canada is actually a very favorable place to have like a small business, because like the taxes really aren't that high on that. And for some of the other things you talked about too would be yes, you do have protections in terms of bankruptcies and things like that. People trying to sue you, it would typically be limited to the assets that are in your holding company. Like for example, let's say your holding company has like $1 million worth of like real estate or something, right? Say, I don't know, the house burns down or something, and you're at fault and you killed somebody. Well, that like right now in the courts, they typically determine that like a human life is worth about like $3 to $4 million in liability. That's pretty standard. So if you only have $1 million worth of assets, well, that's all they can take. Versus like if you own the house personally, then they can take like all the assets of the house and then go after your other assets to say like, okay, do you own like a car? Do you have like a bunch of computers? Do you have like bikes? Like whatever, right? So that's why those protections are in place to help you with that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's like I said. So we were talking a little bit before the stream. If you guys are interested, and my size of company right now, like our company's at about $50 million in size, and we're starting to be targeted by more and more lawsuits. And once you get to that size, you really sort of need these protections to safeguard your assets and really make sure that everything is good, right? So. Highly recommend having everything in a corporation for sure, for many reasons. Mm-hmm.
Right. So what's your plan after, you build your Amazon business?
For the 0 to a billion challenge?
Yeah. Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah. No, I think about it all the time. So, someone actually asked me a very good question on this, right? And they asked me, so it sort of builds upon this. How long do you think the challenge is going to take to complete? And these questions actually are like interconnected, like so intricately, right? And basically, the first acquisition I make is going to completely determine the timeline of this whole thing. So what I mean is, if, for example, I'm here in a year and I have like $200,000 cash and I go and use that to buy like a $2 million company, if that company ends up being a very good company and it continues to grow at like 20 or 30% per year, then that's going to shave like 5 years off this whole challenge because it's going to be able to grow really, really quickly. I'll be able to use that cash flow to buy more assets, right? Alternatively, if it's a complete bomb, that's going to like set things back by like a couple of years for sure, right? So basically, to tie this into your question, is it all comes down to the opportunity and the deal, right? Like, who knows if if the mortgage rates and things continue to be where they're at now, it's a very, 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 very high likelihood that the best opportunities could be like rental properties in like a year or two, right? Because there could be a ton of foreclosures, there could be just a ton of houses on the market to be bought at reasonable prices. So, instead of getting that typical 5 to 8% return on the real estate, we might be getting like 20% returns on it, right? So it all depends on that opportunity and the opportunities that are there when I have the cash in like a year or so. So it's just up in the air a little bit, but it's either going to be buying a company or buying houses for sure.
Okay. What do you think about like the Canadian housing market though? I feel as though it's like a big bubble, and it's gonna pop eventually.
Yeah, so there's two main concerns about that when you talk about bubbles, right? And it's obvious, it's supply and demand. So right now in Ontario, they're basically pushing this number, and they know that they need to build between like 2 to 3 million homes per year to basically like keep up with demand and things like that. Because they know they have a ton of like immigration coming in and lots of people coming, right? So right now, that number is nowhere close to that. I think the number of houses that were built in the last year was like 1.2 million or something in Ontario, which means that there's still an upward pressure. Because if you need 3 million and you only have 1.2 million, that means the asset price is going to go up because there's less supply, right? So the things that would change this would be the sort of macro environment, right? So are we getting less immigration? Birth rates and death rates, they're not going to change that much. So that's probably not going to do anything. But like, I don't really see immigration slowing down. But the thing is that houses might become just too unaffordable, right? But then that's more of a issue of price and not necessarily the velocity in which like the houses are actually bought and sold, right? So for example, right now, like the average mortgage rate is about like 6 to 7%, and like a year ago it was about like 2.5 to 3%. So in Canada, like I'm not sure if you know that or not, like those mortgage terms, like the average term is about like 3 years. So that means within the next year or two, pretty much like 90% of the houses are going to be flipped onto these new higher interest rates, right? And simple logic tells you that these people are not going to be able to afford that, right? And I have an extremely good relationship with the commercial banks because we do a ton of deals and things like that. So I have some information that's a lot of people don't understand or know about, and that's what these banks are doing is saying like, okay, your house payment is normally $500 a month, and normally that pays some interest and some principal, right? But because the rates were variable and the rates have gone up significantly now, the bank's saying like, okay, we'll keep your payments at $500 each, but we're just putting it all towards the interest, and they're basically just making the debt that they owe larger and larger and larger because it doesn't even cover all the interest, right? So basically, that's creating a bit of a bomb that could potentially like blow up. But these things are very complicated, right? Like you could just have like mass immigration, and that could just like throw shade over the whole thing. You don't know how it's going to play out. But
Yeah.
from my perspective, whenever I know that all these costs are guaranteed to go up, the average expected outcome from that is that the asset class is going to go down, right? So I should expect, like I typically expect that within the next like 1 to 2 years, housing will probably be down like another 15, 20%, something like that. I don't think it's going to be like 50%, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But that's what I typically think.
Yeah, in my opinion, but I don't really know much.
It's
Is I
okay.
think there's gonna be like a lot of government regulations or something. I don't know. The government is gonna choose to do something to lower the prices and hopefully lower like rent because like the value of houses goes up way faster than the income
hmm
going
Yeah,
up.
that's actually, yeah, I talked about that today in the video. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but basically in 1960, the average American was making $6,000 and the houses were $11,000. Now, in 2023, the average American is making about $60,000 and so their pay went up by 10x, but the house didn't go up by 10x. The houses went from $11,000 to $400,000. So do you see how crazy that is? So the income only
Yeah.
went up by 10x. The price of the house went up by like 38x or however the math works out. And like they're just going up like crazy, right? And that always happens as asset classes mature. But one of the things that I think they could potentially do is say like, look, okay, you can have your first house and like a second house or something, but then maybe they apply a tax to like third, fourth, fifth houses. Like I could see them doing that, right? And like the capitalist in me like hates it. It should be like a free market. It should be, but like something that I don't know. I kind of have a soft spot for housing because I understand
Yeah, me
that
too.
like people like they just want to have a house, right? And like I
Yeah,
understand there,
they
yeah,
want to live.
yeah.
You know. Yeah,
So
I
like
agree with
I
you.
see it both ways. So like maybe you should like force people to like okay you can have like two or three houses and then after that you have to switch to like commercial units or something like that so then like the residential units have more availability but again
Mhm.
like someone can make an argument to say like look it's a free market right if it's a free market it should be a free market and the prices can continue to go up and they'd be well within the right to say that but it's just where you fall on like the scale of you know it's not even capitalism versus anything it's just saying like look should people have an easier chance of buying a house. Like in general, I think yes, they should because it's an important milestone for a lot of people. So,
Mhm.
I could definitely see them like putting taxes on like additional units going forward. But you never know. It could just not happen, right?
Yeah. The way I see it also is like it's kind of like a human necessity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like imagine if they privatized like water, right? And then the price of water drove up. That would be insane. But yeah, it's just how it is. Free market, as you said.
Yeah, it's these things have been tried before. Like there's plenty of times too where you've had like socialist governments that have completely collapsed it too, right? So you kind of need a mix of things. That's why in general Canada is a good place to live. At least I believe that because there's a good mix of opportunity and like safety nets for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hmm
100%. It's good to have those safety nets because I always hear about stories where like in America you can't some people can't afford insulin and that's crazy, right?
hmm Yeah, so that's one of the things that people don't realize. In America, most people get health insurance through their employer, but once they stop working, typically they can't afford to actually have it for themselves. And there are programs like Medicare and Medicaid, but I think it's something like 7 or 8% of Americans just don't have any health care coverage. So
Hmm.
it creates a bit of a dilemma for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice for the people watching? I don't know how many people are watching right now.
So it comes in and out. So typically it goes up between like a few dozen and then it goes down. But then like after I post like the whole video on YouTube and then a bunch of people go back and watch it. And then once I like tell people to go watch it, they go watch it again. But yeah, no, the comments have been positive. Everyone's enjoying the conversation so far. And yeah,
Right.
basically my advice to people is like, look, you have to try to be the best version of yourself, and I feel like a lot of people lie about it, right? And I understand that. Like, you want to be proud of yourself, you want to feel good about yourself, and that's fantastic. You should absolutely do that. But if you have a goal of something you want to achieve and you are measuring your progress towards it, some days you have to say, look, I am not where I want to be, and this is what the corrective action I have to do, right? And a lot of people are very afraid of having that conversation, right? And that is, if you take anything away from this, I think that's the most important thing is like, look, you have to be real about what you're aiming to accomplish, about your capabilities, and your dreams, right? And when you do that and you say, look, I can achieve this, then in your mind it just flips like a switch flips. And I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, if I'm at a location and I see where I want to go, that's it. That's enough, right? Like, I don't need to see the path. I just need to know like where I'm gonna go, and then I'll figure it out. But for some people, they want to say like, okay, I need to turn left and right and left and right and all these places to know all the path. I don't think knowing the path helps at all, right? I think it's just like, look,
Hmm.
you know what you have to do, just go and do it. You might make some wrong turns. Like, who cares? Like, again, like, that's one of my favorite things that I get to tell people is, look, I didn't even start until I was about to turn 25, so I was like 24 and like 3/4 basically. That's when I started, and
Yeah.
it's just like, if I started at 20, I probably would be like uh, maybe like 150 million net worth right now, something like that. But it doesn't matter. Like, my life would be
Hmm.
like no different, like between those two things right now. Like, I can do anything I want to do. I can go anywhere I want to go. I can buy anything I want to buy like right now, right? So like it literally doesn't matter at all. So it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you don't have to have all this pressure on yourself. Just go do what you want to do. Be real. Be motivated, and just get after it. That's all it is.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a lot about. Seems to me like it's a lot more about doing, because like in like my field, like learning, right? To really learn software development, you gotta like just do a project. It's gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
really bad project, but you learn stuff, you reiterate, and you get better and better, and
Mm-hmm.
then you get paid well, hopefully.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, like, man, I've had so many people who have gone through that exact same path, right? And it's always the same thing, right? Like, they go, you learn how to code, but then like typically like the code is the same. So like Python is Python, right? But like an expert can do it so much better because they're able to make it like more condensed, and they know like exactly how to like make good comments and all these things. And it's just, you can always perfect, right, and get better and better and better at it. And when you do, like, other people are able to like see that and really appreciate that and reward you for it, right? So it's just all
Hmm.
about becoming like the best version of yourself you can be. So if you're going to be a programmer, don't be like the 82nd best programmer in the company. Go and try to be the best. Go and do it, right? And then you'll surround yourself with other people who are trying to do that too, and that's just going to make you really, really powerful, right? Because that's another thing we didn't even talk about yet. It's like, who are you surrounding yourself with to really meet these goals, right, and make it happen. And that's just so important too, because there's a famous saying by this guy. I don't know if you know him. His name is Dan Pena, and he always says, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." And it's just so true, right? Because if you hang around people who aren't motivated, they're not trying to be the best, they're just okay being mediocre, whatever. Like, odds are that's what you're gonna do, right? If you're around people who are extremely motivated and they want to do their best at all times, that's like what you're going to naturally become, because you're going to think, oh man, this guy is not taking a day off today. He's going to be after it, right? So now I have to do it. And these core philosophies are the real things that are really going to help push you forward for sure.
All right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I needed to hear that.
For sure. So is there anything else, man? We were going for almost an hour.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's been
yeah.
good.
We did book like 1 hour off, so I think that was a good note to end it off.
Okay, buddy. So look,
Yeah,
you have the plan. Maybe we'll do a follow up in like maybe 6 months or something. See where you're at. But look,
for
just
sure.
do it. Okay, like you can do it. You know what to do. Like man, you know your numbers. You have to get a job
Yeah,
where you can make like 100 to 120 a year. You go and you save up your 500 or 600 thousand, and you can buy like one unit at a time. You don't have to just get to that 500,000. You can buy get $100,000 saved up. Go and buy a unit, and just do it like that, block by block. But you know your numbers. To get to the lifestyle you want, you need about like $500,000 or $600,000 in cash. Use that to buy your rental units, and then that's gonna be able to afford you for the life that you want, man. Just go do it, okay? You can. I promise you.
all right, thanks, Michael.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah,
Good luck. Goodbye.
you too.
Well, guys, that was a pretty good episode. He's really nice, and it's I like talking to people when they're young, right? Because they just need a little guidance, and I don't know, if you just realize like, look, you have so much that you're gonna accomplish and you can do in your life, and you don't have to have all the answers. Just go after it. And it's just like, I'm just so sick of people who just sit around and they just complain and they bitch and moan about like how bad things are or how things should be or whatever. You just have to get after it. That's all it is. So I don't know. I really like Conrad. He was a really nice guy. He seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he's going to do great. So we'll follow up in 6 months. It's all fun and games until they know that I'm coming back to check on them, right? Anyways, guys, thank you for watching today, okay? And we will catch you tomorrow. Goodbye.